Hello, and welcome back to the Long Distance Love Bombs podcast. I'm your host. It's me, Dr. Jeremy Goldberg, and my guest today, our guest today, because we are co-creating a collective, collaborative experience here, aren't we? Our guest today is George. George at the 10 Men. George is a big fan of privacy and subtle anonymity, so he didn't want his last name to be used. But his Instagram account at the 10 Men is a favorite of mine. I love it. I love what he stands for. I love how he does it. And I reached out to him and said, "Hey, George, you want to come on the podcast?" And he did. And it was great. So if you don't know the 10 Men account, he is basically trying to widen perspectives around men, around advocating for men and men's mental health. He has and encourages uncomfortable conversations and exposes ugly truths. He likes to brand himself as the unpopular other half of gender equality. And one thing that I really like about George is that he's pretty straight and narrow. He's a straight shooter. He remains objective. A lot of his posts are cited or include citations to scientific facts and figures from representative government agencies, and he has a lot of content around topics, issues, opinions that can be quite polarizing and or controversial, and we talk about some of that in this conversation. George gets a lot of pushback. He has a lot of haters. There's a lot of vitriol thrown his way, and he continues to aspire to be a grounded, humble helper. Not a helper, that's a weird word, but somebody that is using their voice for the greater good, for the strong morals and values that he holds. And we also talk in this conversation about the longer term view of putting ourselves into the future and imagining the work that we're doing now. Will it stand the test of time? Will we be proud of it? And so that's part of the conversation. We talk about a lot of social issues. We talk about the domestic violence programs that are unavailable for men. We talk about various social and cultural norms. It is a feast. This is not an episode of famine. This is a feast. It is fun. It is playful. George has also an incredible British accent, so that is very enjoyable to listen to. I think you're going to dig it. If you're not familiar with his work, check him out at the 10 Men on Instagram. And without further ado, here's George. George at the 10 Men. Sorry.
The 10 Men. Yeah.
My apologies.
No worries.
What? Did you intentionally choose 10 Men instead of 10 Man?
It was the real answer is because man wasn't available. But I liked it also because the Tin Man isn't supposed to be me. Tin Men is supposed to be all men. It's supposed to be a metaphor for men as a group, meaning like the Tin Man in the story of Wizard of Oz is a man who looks for his heart throughout the journey of the story, and then later finds he already had one. So I was like, what a nice metaphor for men, all men, not just me. And also, I wanted to give the image that the Tin Men as an account was bigger than it was. I wanted to make it seem like more of a journal or like a newspaper, magazine, like a team of us, which people still believe, but it's not true. It's just me. Yeah. And I think a lot of people think that there's more people behind the Tin Men than just this idiot. And unfortunately, they're wrong. And it is actually just me. So yeah, the Tin Men. I mean, I'm always playing with should I replace it with my name or not? And I've yet to do that. And I think people are quite attached to it. I remember talking to people about, should I change the red dot? The icon is the red dot, which is supposed to again symbolize the heart of the Tin Men. And I did that primarily because I didn't want to see my face. But people really attached to it now, and they don't want to see my face. I was like, should I change it to my face? And they're like, no, we like the dot. Keep the dot. And also, I don't know. I mean, I always say hate influencers. I don't like referring to myself as an influencer, and I hate people just constantly putting photos of their own face on their Instagram. like I'm interested in seeing your face several times. And the Tin Men again isn't about me personally. I consider myself extremely lucky, although I do have personal experiences of a lot of the things I talk about. I consider myself very privileged and very lucky. And this isn't about me. The post of today is about boys in Nigeria being killed by Boko Haram, a terrorist group. Obviously, that's not relatable to me. So it pisses me off when people say, "Oh, look at you whinging, whining. What got a victim complex?" And I'm like, no, I mean, I understand. I'm lucky. I'm very advantaged in life, but I'm using my privilege to help men who are less privileged than me. And none of this isn't about me. That's why there's no photos of me. And that's why it's not the Tin Man. That's why it's men.
Yeah, it's like you can't win, right? It's like my name's not on there, my face isn't on there. I don't talk about
Yeah,
myself or my life, and yet there's still a
yeah,
lot of people out there that are pissed off
yeah.
at me.
It's like I don't ask for money. I don't look for brand deals. I'm not interested in anything, and I just want to put content out there. That's it. I don't. I'm like a lot of influencers are like, "Hey, this is me. It's my morning routine. This is how I make my granola. Now I'm gonna make a mocha coffee and and like this is my fitness regime. It's my skin." I'm like, oh, I mean that might be for you, and that's great, but it's not for me. I just want to share information, objective information. I don't want to tell you my skincare routine because I don't have one, first of all, and also that's not the purpose of my blog.
Yeah. That's gonna be down the road though, because in the Wizard of Oz, didn't the Tin Man like get some grease on his joints and start moving more fluidly or something? Like
I'm gonna be super honest with you, mate. I've not read that story in a long time. I don't know.
I,
I mean, I know the overall narrative. There's a
I
man who's made of
it,
tin and he sticks around for a bit and tries to find a heart. And then honestly, I'm not even sure if I've ever read that story. Uh,
I've not read it, but I've just seen the movie back in the day.
yeah, well, that's more than me, if I'm honest. I mean, I've been exposed straight away. Question one, being undone. I mean, he doesn't know what he's
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah.
Um, But it is nice, the Tin Men, because I think isn't the villain a witch, the Wicked Witch of the West, and then the Tin Man is one of the good guys. And it's funny because when I set up my page, there was an account that took a massive issue with me, really, really hated me. They were sort of like my nemesis, and they were an account. I won't name it, but the bio for them was "We are the daughters of the witches they couldn't burn" or something like that. So they
Mhm.
presented themselves as witches, and I was like, that's perfect. The witch, the Tin Men, looking for his heart on a jet. I was like, this is like it's a beautiful story. One person sent me a DM once. This is always. One guy sent me a set of messages, very distressed, saying, "I don't understand your name because there is no T in men." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "There's no T in men." I was like, "Sorry, mate, what are you talking about?" And I looked at it and I read it, and he'd read it as the T in men. And I was like, no, there is no T in men, and that's not the name of the account.
Yeah,
That's what that's funny.
that's gold, man. But we were just talking before we recorded, and you were saying that you desire some aspect of privacy or anonymity, so your last name is not going to be on the episode, it's not on your page. And maybe that's a good segue into some of the work that you're doing, because you said there's a lot of contentious opinions out there. There's a lot of
Mm.
passionate individuals that really don't love what you're doing.
No, no. Well, I think Che Guevara said it's sad not to have friends, and even sadder not to have enemies. And unfortunately, I do have some enemies. I just think a lot of things people find a threat to them, like to their identity and to their job and to their community. And I mean, it's not just me. It's like people in the space is renowned for being very hostile towards you. One of the things I speak most about, probably the issue I talk about most after suicide, is domestic violence. And I know like some of the earliest researchers in domestic violence who studied male victims of abuse. So Professor Murray Strauss, Professor Susan Steinmetz, Professor Richard Jellis, they did the early formative work on domestic violence, including domestic violence against men. And whereas their work on violence against women was upheld and applauded when they talked about men, and when they found that men and women are equally abusive, they all got death threats, all of them. So Suzanne Steinmetz had a bomb threat called to her wedding. Richard Jellis had death threats. So did Murray Strauss. Murray Strauss had like a whole campaign of harassment against him. There are people like he got some sort of lifetime award from a really reputable sort of institution, and like the two front rows all stood up and walked out in protest. Like Susan Steinmetz actually abandoned her work after the bomb threat to her daughter's wedding. And it's not unusual for that sort of stuff to happen. I mean, my first podcast guest ever was Erin Pitsey, who set up the first abuse refuge in the world for women 50 years ago, 52 years ago. She set up the charity Refuge UK. She wrote the first book on domestic violence. She, as I said, opened the first refuge in the world for women, and she tried to set up a refuge for men because same as the three academics I mentioned. She also found domestic violence isn't gendered. A lot of the women that were being abused coming to her for help were abusive themselves. So she was like, the first thing I need to do is set up a house for men. And as soon as she did that, all the funding stopped, and then the death threats came in, bomb threats. Had a police escort, had a bomb squad going for her mail. Rumors how someone shot her dog with an air rifle. She was harassed and picketed everywhere she went. And I was like, this is the woman that set up the first refuge in the world. Like a woman who has personally saved hundreds, if not thousands, of women's lives, has sheltered thousands of women, like right across the UK. Like her love of women is beyond question. And yet for her just to even talk about setting up a refuge for men is enough to erase all of her good work and replace it with bomb threats. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm overreacting, but I try to keep myself personally detached from my work. Also for the reason we talked about offline is my account isn't about me. Like I consider myself extremely privileged for many reasons. And although I have some personal experience in some of the things I write about, primarily it's not about me. The content is about other men who are less advantaged than I am. And I am, as I'm routinely told, I am using my privilege to help others. So it's not about me, which is why I don't like putting photos up of me. I don't like having my face on my account. I don't like having my name on the account. It's purely a space to share information about men and boys for the benefit of men and boys and for the benefit of people that love men and boys. So it's not about me.
And even when I first discovered you, as I mentioned, through my buddy Mike Campbell, said, "Oh, you should have this guy on your podcast." And I went and read your work and looked at your Instagram. And my takeaway when I first saw it was, oh, this is like an online magazine or publication of some type.
Yeah.
This isn't like a one-man show there's a person. He's like, yeah, you should meet George. And I was like, wait, George is the 10 Men media company that I presume this to be? And I was quite surprised by that.
Yeah, no, I would take that as a compliment. I have been slowly ratcheting up the quality of the work, trying to just incrementally improve the product I offer. Like I want my content to be the best of its kind on Instagram. That is, like I would love to explore other platforms. I'd love to go into YouTube more. I think I could do even better work on YouTube, but I'm just so limited on time. I've concentrated on Instagram, and I want to make it the best. And I was like, there aren't many spaces that speak about men and boys, certainly not in comparison to women and girls. So I was like, one of the few places to exist, being my page, I want to be really high quality, like comprehensive, well-made, inclusive, and just high production value. All the citations in the caption, all of the images are responsibly sourced and royalty-free, and all the artists credited. And I'm like, I'm a professional content creator by trade, so I had a big head start. Let's put it that way. And yeah, I mean, I like, people always think it's a magazine. People are like, oh, it must be a whole team of people. And it's not. It's just me. I am the Tin Man. Nice to meet you. And any kind words or hate mail, send it straight to me. It's because that's who I am, the Tin Man. Yeah.
And so for those who might be listening that have no idea what the 10 Men is or the work that you do you mind giving a little overview of what you do and why you do it?
Yeah, so the Tin Men is a online space for the discussion of men and boys advocacy in a way that is unapologetic and progressive and left-leaning. Like I fundamentally believe men and boys advocacy is a left-wing issue. I consider myself left-wing. I consider my stance on politics to be very progressive, and the Tin Men is a space to talk about men and boys. So I talk about suicide, mental health, and addiction, and domestic violence, and body image, and sexual abuse. I talk about boys in school and bullying. Today I'm talking about Boko Haram, the terrorist group in Nigeria who are killing boys and men indiscriminately. Yesterday I was talking about migrant boys. Day before that I'm talking about relationships. Like there's so many things that people don't want to talk about because they're so unpopular. That's obviously it's dangerous to talk about for the reasons I explained earlier, but also it's excellent because it means I have a whole medley of untouched content because no one wants to go near it. And I talk about anything and everything that impacts men and boys, and I try to share that wholesome content too. And I try to make it an inclusive space, and I want it to be evidence based. So I talked about all the citations in the caption. So I try to keep it evidence based and scientifically minded and open for discussion. And I try to encourage people to share their opinions in the comments. And overall, it's just a very vibrant meeting point of ideas, and sometimes a bit too vibrant, but exciting place on the least. I always talk about my favorite comment I ever received was one person, and all it said was, "Holy shit! Every comment is an essay." And because every comment in my page is just like a big wall of text, and I'm like, that's the sort of in-depth, nuanced conversation I want to sort of encourage on my page, and that's what I'm most proud of. It's not my work I'm most proud of. It's the community of people that follow me, and they keep me on my toes, and they give me some amazing ideas, and a lot of them are extraordinarily smart. And I like to see the discourse. I like to ask people, what do you think though? What's your opinion? What have I got it wrong? Have I got it right? So yeah, it's just a big space for conversation and ideas and information in like the best possible way.
Yeah, and when I first found you, one of the things I was most impressed by was the fact that you are talking about facts and studies and research findings from these national health institutions or these very renowned scientific publications. And you were doing it in a very objective, seemingly neutral way. And while at the same time I was reading some of your posts, I was like, oh shit, like he's going to get, he's going for it. Like good for him. And reading the comments, I love your page for that because you use that word nuance. And I think that is a thread that runs through all of your content, which is, hey, I know this is a delicate thing to talk about, but here's some really interesting facts that nobody is talking about, and we should probably do that. And then the comments kind of explode. And so I guess one of my questions that I had for you was, what kind of pushback do you normally get, and why do you think you get so much pushback for the presentation of facts and findings and figures that are widely known?
Lots of reasons. A lot of people like it for their own, well, everyone has their own reasons not to like it, I suppose. But I mean, what if I were to hazard a guess, a lot of people find it a threat. A lot of people, especially today, they build their political ideas and opinions into their sort of very identity. So someone might identify as a feminist, and to be a feminist, you have to believe a certain things are true. And if I, like, such as domestic violence is a gendered issue, is obviously a big catchphrase for feminism. Domestic violence is almost a poster child of patriarchy theory. So if I come along and I'm like, well, actually, domestic violence isn't gendered, and in fact, men and women are equally violent, and there's actually data that says women are more violent than men, and the whole patriarchy theory as a means of understanding domestic violence has been described as a fallacy and is a farce, and it doesn't actually work and hasn't led to a reduction of violence against women. People don't like to hear that. And regardless of whether it's right or wrong, and it is right, people don't like it. They don't like it because it's embarrassing for them to have believed something for so long only to find out it's not true from an Instagram account. And also, like, people's identity, their community, their jobs are often dependent on what I'm saying being wrong. So if you work for a domestic violence charity and all your funding comes to you on a basis that you help women and children only, and then I'm like, well, half of people you're not helping, they could potentially lose half their funding. And I sympathize with that. But I sympathize more with the men who are not getting helped. So I would prefer to, don't want to close down women's shelters in that sense. I want to encourage more shelters open for men. And there's growing pains that come with that. And it's embarrassing, and it requires a lot of reflection. I've talked to so many people who have changed and grown, are better off, and have left certain ideas behind as a result of similar content I've presented. And they are deeply thankful for having learned so much from me. And I'm honored to have been part of teaching them that. But some people are not willing to do that. Some people react aggressively. Some people are just a bit too thin-skinned, in my opinion, to actually challenge their own beliefs. And yeah, like, I mean, I don't really care about the online stuff. Like, send me whatever DM you want. I'll have a great conversation. Often the comments that kick off, I don't delete the comments that disagree with me. They get pinned and they go right to the top and we have a great discussion about it. I don't care too much about that, but it is difficult when your friends and your family reject what you're saying. That's when it's genuinely upsetting. But overall, I mean, I must temper this by saying that I get overwhelming support. I don't really get death threats. I don't really get anything silly. I get huge amounts of support and kind words sent to me every single day. So don't worry, it's fine. But not everyone is quite so kind, unfortunately.
Are those kind words that you receive primarily from men or women, or mixed?
Mostly men, but a lot of women, especially mothers of boys. A lot of trans people actually follow me. A lot of trans men, especially because they use my account, these men, as a means of understanding the male experience, because they've lived a lot of their life as a woman and now they identify as a man, and they use the Tin Men as a space to better understand that experience in a way that isn't full of ideology and dogma and just nonsense, anti-male bigotry and all that crap. So yeah, I mean, I've always been, one of the things I'm proud of is that I have a lot of women follow me. About 1/3 of my followers are women, which is unusual for account of my style, of my type. And I would say some of the fiercest and earliest and most passionate followers of mine are women. And I'm incredibly proud of that.
And so how would you distinguish yourself from, I imagine you get branded as this supporter of the patriarchy quite often. And so how do you differentiate yourself from that? Or how would you define someone that is supporting men in the guise of supporting the patriarchy versus, it seems what you're trying to do is supporting men because men should get support? That makes sense?
It's difficult because I want to draw a big, thick line between women's rights and women's issues, of which I am an avid and passionate supporter, and then concepts like the patriarchy, which I find are infantilizing of women and dehumanizing of men, and I find extremely divisive. And I feel like that idea and the ideas that come out of it, like toxic masculinity, male privilege, male fragility, mansplaining, man-interruption, man-spreading, all of this is just really childish discourse, and we can certainly do better. I spend some time pointing at it, making fun, but mostly and increasingly so, I try to just set a better example and hope people gravitate towards that without me needing to have to point and laugh at how obscene and absurd some of the other people are. I mentioned I'm a professional content creator. I work in film, but I do love design, branding, and copywriting especially. But I've tried to use my skills to rebrand Men and Boys Advocacy. I don't consider myself an MRA. I use every opportunity to remind people that I'm not an MRA.
Sorry, what's an MRA?
An MRA is basically the opposite of a feminist. So you have your men's rights advocate, and I think they're unfairly characterized, if I'm honest. And I'm not offended by being called an MRA. I'm just not one. But the idea of MRA and men's advocacy in general has been and is often compared to like white supremacy or straight pride, or like being like the alt-right, or being a Nazi. Like those are the sort of things that are compared to Men and Boys Advocacy, which is obscene. So I've always considered the challenge is more of a brand identity crisis for Men and Boys, where because the facts are luckily on my side. Talking of domestic violence as we did, the facts that show domestic violence is not gendered, it is substantial. There are, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of studies that show gender parity in victimization of domestic violence. And those studies are done by the greatest researchers in the world that have ever lived. So I have this amazing body of research. All I need to do is find out the best way of presenting it to people like yourself. And that's a great challenge to be given as a content creator. I just think it needs to be rebranded, because often the way it's previously done is it's loud, it's aggressive, it's kind of garish, it's in your face, it's big, it's the classic angry white guy shouting into camera. And I want to get away from that, and I want to be a little bit more sophisticated perhaps, and inclusive, and use like a bit of comedy when needed, and look at my tone of voice and use different images and beautiful infographic. My overall goal is to rebrand Men and Boys Advocacy in that as more progressive, more inclusive, more left-leaning, and hopefully just banishes this idea that men and boys is somehow advocating for men and boys is somehow the same as advocating for white people, which it isn't, or advocating for straight people, which it isn't. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I don't think I'll ever complete it. But it's exciting and it's challenging and extremely rewarding. Extremely rewarding.
Yeah. Just to add to that, it's also perhaps confused by a lot of people that advocating for men and boys is equivalent to not advocating for women and girls.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Like just because I don't talk about women. I mean, I do talk about women sometimes. Just because I don't doesn't mean I don't care. Of course, I care. Like my beliefs of men and boys are not based on denying the way I feel about women and girls. Like I'm just as passionate about women and girls. Everything people believe about women and girls, I believe too. I'm pro-choice. I understand increasingly so about like sexual harassment of women, how awful it is. I try to be a good ear and a listener to women in my life and a supporter of women's rights. And like the whole Roe Wade pro-choice thing, like when that happened last year, and then I posted a bunch of content about it, and I made it very clear this is bullshit. This is crazy. Like women are losing their fundamental human rights in America, and that's not acceptable, and not something I support. And when people like Andrew Tate come along, I love calling them dickheads. I love it, and I'll call it Andrew Tate's a dickhead. I hate him, and Pearl, and all his grifters, all the Fresh and Fit, all these losers, total losers. And I don't want anything to do with them. Like I hate them for what they say about women, and I hate them for how they make me look. They make me look like them. Like I get compared to them all the time, and I'm like, listen, I fucking hate those guys. If anything, Andrew Tate and co, they're like a symptom of the problem I talk about, which is a massive dereliction of kindness to boys, especially. And boys are not having their questions answered. The problems they experience are not being addressed in any meaningful way. So naturally, they gravitate towards dickheads like Andrew Tate. So I've got no problem calling him out, and I love doing it. And in fact, some of my most popular posts are the ones where I call him out. So I mean, I would say my community is overwhelmingly anti Andrew Tate too. Not all of them, of course, but most of them for sure.
And then how scared are you, or maybe scared is not the right word. How concerned are you about the future of men and boys? Like optimistic, pessimistic? Is this part of what drives your work?
I would say it's hard to be optimistic, if I'm honest, but I'm definitely more optimistic. I'm definitely the most optimistic I felt, or the least pessimistic. I think things are changing. Like I genuinely think the last 6 months, I've sort of seen a critical mass where enough people are talking about these things in the right kind of way, where meaningful action is just around the corner. Like the conversations are happening. One of the things I've been talking about for years is the idea of a minister for men in the UK. So in the UK, we have a minister for women, and we have a minister for women's health, and we have an ambassador for women's health. So 3 governmental positions dedicated to supporting and championing and protecting women, which is excellent. And I want to keep that. But I also want a minister for men. Just the one, not 3 just yet, but just start with a minister for men. So the minister for men can talk about homelessness, addictions, the male suicide crisis, male victims of domestic violence, those sort of things. I've been talking about it for ages. And now finally, it is in the news. People in the news are talking about it. I turn on the radio and people are having these conversations. MPs are actually standing up finally and saying we need to do something for men and boys. And the Minister for Men is one of the things I'm hearing more about. Still, it's still widely rejected by the public. It's still, most people don't want a Minister for Men. So that's why I'm not massively optimistic, but at least we're having the conversations. And I feel like the people here listening to you, following my account, I feel like we are, in a lot of ways, ahead of the curve in that sense, where the ideas we're talking about now are the ones that society will be talking about in 5 years' time. So I am optimistic. A lot of the people I talk to are optimistic. A lot of people I know in the research field are doing amazing work, and it's being published. I could talk to you at length about great news I've seen from people that follow me. So no, I'm not pessimistic. I do understand it's depressing. It's depressing and lonely and demoralizing sometimes, but it's getting better, and it will keep getting better. You just got to stick around.
And I think that's been true throughout history. Like any kind of progressive change,
Yeah.
expansion of freedoms, etc. The people leading the tip of the spear are the ones who are pissed off, disgruntled, but also radically hopeful to try to talk about a future that they believe in, that we can create. And
yeah, I have this vision. I mean, it's quite a self-aggrandizing vision of myself where I'm dead, long gone, and then someone in the distant future finds my account, and they're like, "Oh my God, an amazing treasure trove of information! I can't believe this guy has collected it all." Because I'd feel like, oh, I think the things I'm saying will be more appreciated in the future. Hopefully, not after I'm dead, but that is a bit of a fun.
yeah,
fantasy I have.
I thought that as well. Like a lot of my work is about making kindness cool. That was the origin story, and making compassion commonplace. And I've envisioned just looking back, like, am I on the right side of history? Will people just think that my work and what I'm talking about is so logical and reasonable, and like that the conflict looking back just seems like insanity? Like for example, you're in support of a minister for men, and like that is half the population should have some kind of representation. That seems reasonable to me. Like what?
Yep.
But you suggested most people are against that position. Like what's the pushback?
People are, I think, both biologically less compassionate towards men than women for a lot of reasons we can talk about. But I also feel like we're culturally conditioned to think that men are privileged in every single possible way, and they're not the victims of anything. In fact, they're the perpetrator. And the idea of having a minister for men is, like I said, it's like having like a white pride march, or like having a straight pride day. But there's such bullshit, because those are not fair equivalences whatsoever. Because I hate the idea that being white is the same as being a man, and I hate even more the idea that being a woman is the same as being black. And I'm like, that is so stupid and offensive to black people that it's not even worth like talking about. Like being a man is not the same as being white, because being white, you're more or less ubiquitously advantaged in every single possible way you could expect. But being a man is not the same. There are significant systemic disadvantages of being a man, big ones, and it's not the same. And that's why people don't like a minister for men, because they think it's like, what's next? A minister for white people, a minister for the able-bodied, a minister for the straight people. Like, it's not fair. I get how people arrive at that conclusion, but if you actually think about it and actually look at the facts, it's not actually accurate. But going back to what you said about where are we at in terms of optimism? Have you heard of like called the diffusion of innovation theory? It's really interesting. It's basically one of the oldest social science theories in the world, and it's the way an idea becomes viral. So it's how a movement starts. So obviously the civil rights movement you can track on the diffusion of innovation theory, and it's basically a bell curve. And what it is, it's population over time, and it basically shows how a movement gains momentum. And it starts with the visionaries. So Steve Jobs, for example, 1% of people, visionaries. And then you have the early adopters. And that's like the people who don't do something for rational reasons. They do it because it feels right. They make gut decisions. They're the people that, queue outside the iPhone store, or they're the people that spend £5,000 on a flat screen TV when they could have just waited 12 months, got it for half the price. They're the ones that are like, spending exorbitant amounts on Xbox games and all it because they want to be first. They're the early adopters. And then you have the early and late majority. So about 16% on both. So about, I'm sorry, 30% on both. So basically the majority of people. And to get to the early and late majority, you have to get past the early adopters. So the majority will not do something until someone else has done it first. And that's the early adopter. And it's basically a tipping point. At the end, by the way, you have the laggards. The laggards are like, my mum is a laggard for sure. But the point I'm trying to make is that
it's like, fine, I'll buy an iPhone because there's no more non-iPhones.
Yeah. Like, okay. And for the record, like we're all laggards and early adopters in different areas. So I was a bit of an early adopter in Harry Potter. I was one of the first people to read Harry Potter, and I'll tell anyone that any opportunity I can get, I'll tell people that because it's amazing. But I was very late. I was a bit of a laggard for an iPhone. Ironically, I was like 21 or so when I first got an iPhone. But the point I'm trying to make is that to have mass market success, you have to get past the early adopters. And the early adopters are about 16% of people. So once you get to 16% market penetration, the scale tips. And then suddenly, you've seen it happen a million times before, something goes viral and it blows up. And I always wonder where men and boys advocacy is on that curve. Where is that tipping point? When are we going to finally hit the thing where the fuse is lit and it kicks off and explodes, and finally we have some sort of meaningful change? And I think we're pretty close. Like I'm seeing the conversations happening in the mainstream media. I feel like they're becoming more and more accepted. People are stepping out and actually talking about things that are uncomfortable. I hope I'm playing a small part in that. And I think in the next 5 years, the landscape will be very different in a more positive way. And
are there examples in certain more progressive countries where they have minister for men or some equivalent of that? Like, has anyone gone first? Like,
no. America, I would say hats off to Richard Reeves for being the first one through, but I don't think he's been successful just yet. So America, very similar. That there's various different governmental departments in America for women, like Department for Women's Health and the Women's Bureau and the Office for Violence Against Women. And then you have the White House Commission on Women and Girls. And none of that exists for men in the same way that the Minister for Men doesn't exist. There's also a dozen or so state departments, state commissions on women and girls. So Washington will have a commission on women and girls. And that's, again, a government-funded commission, really, really important. I'm supportive of it. And it supports women and girls issues. But none of those exist for men. Washington State tried to be the first state to set up a commission for boys and men last year. It was really exciting and it failed. But at least they tried. At least they tried. And Richard Reeves, who is an excellent scholar and expert on men and boys advocacy, and like in terms of this space, like he is the number one man right now. He is the guy. He's extraordinarily clever, smart, articulate, compassionate, charismatic, everything you want to see. And he was talking about the Commission on Boys and Men in Washington and was upset too. But he's actually now gone ahead and set up recently the American Institute for Boys and Men, of which he is the president. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. It's very early. It doesn't even exist yet, but he's announced it. It's definitely going to be a good thing. The right person is leading it. I would love to be involved, Richard, if you're listening. And I think in another year or two's time, that's going to take more shape. But no, to answer your question, no. As far as I'm aware, no commissions on boys and men, no minister for men anywhere. No, none of the departments I mentioned in terms of health or workplace safety or education they don't exist for men and boys. And there were no state commissions whatsoever in America for men and boys, and there's about 15 for women and girls.
Yeah, it seems like that's perhaps that shifting point whereby somebody's got to go first, and nobody ever wants to be the first to dance at the concert. But then that viral video, then there's the second one, then there's the third one, and then
it's not. It's like the first one through gets bloodied. Like the first person through the breach is the one that gets absolutely. Everyone's seen like there's war films where the first person into a building just gets shot the fuck up. No one wants to be that person. We want to be the. I want to be the second one. Richard Reeves goes in, he gets bloodied by everyone, and then I'll come in and take the credit. So yeah, no, you are right. It's scary to be first, but I mean, I'm sure. I guess I am in some ways one of the first, and it is scary, but it's not as scary as you think. Like it really isn't. It's not that hostile. It's not great either, but I'm not going to present myself as some sort of martyr because I'm not. I'm genuinely showered in kindness and thanks more than I am hate and death threats. So
yeah. Perhaps you could review some of the reasons or some of the ways that men are disadvantaged that people listening might not fully understand, because I think some of those things related to education or suicide, etc., might justify the establishment of the Ministry of Men. But I'm not convinced it's as widely known or acknowledged how bad men are doing.
No, this is something I talk about quite a lot. Everyone seems to think that society doesn't give a shit about men. And there are certainly parts of society that that don't care about men. But more so, I think the problem is we don't understand what is going on. And when people actually take time to listen to what I have to say, 9 times out of 10, they do care, and their mind is blown. Sometimes they're still an asshole, and you can't change that person's mind. But to answer your question, I mean, just to go for the low hanging fruit, men live shorter lives than women in every single country in the world. Every single country, men have a lower life expectancy. Doesn't matter if it's a developed country or developing nation, lower life expectancy. In America, a man has a higher chance of dying at every single age group, every single one, from neonatal to old age, higher rate of death. In fact, it's something like men are 1.4 times likely to die as a whole in America. Men's health is dreadful. Men lead in 9 of the top 10 causes of death in America, which is outrageous. Being a man is now the single biggest demographic factor of early death. If you could make male and female mortality rates the same, so if you equalize the chance of dying between men and women, you would actually save more lives than curing cancer. So that gives you a little bit of a taste for men's health. And just to wrap that one up, like men's health outcomes in America are worse than women's across every single socio-economic, racial, or ethnic group. So it's bad. It's really bad. And when that's compounded by the fact that, as I said, there are no departments, no offices for men's health in America, none. There's 4 for women, none for men, and they're all government funded, which is great. And please keep the Office of Women's Health open, but let's just open 4 for men, please. Education is not much better. Same again, universally behind. Boys are. So boys are behind in every stage of education in virtually every single Western country. So again, from the early years right through to higher education and postdoctorate, boys are behind. Young men and boys are behind every stage, every country in the West. And it's getting worse as well, because obviously in countries like Africa and the Middle East, girls are behind, because I mean, there's places in the world where girls can't even go to school. But overall now, it's changed recently, and officially there are now more boys out of school worldwide than girls. It's like 138 million boys and 135 million girls, or something like that. So education's pretty bad. More likely to die at every age, more likely to die in every country, more likely to be uneducated in every single Western country, every single stage. And then like they're all big issues, but there's individual issues as well. So like one of the things I talk about is that workplace safety, and the amount of men that die at work is outrageous. And not in America especially, but worldwide. Like, I cannot believe every year 100,000 fishermen die in the fishing industry. 100,000 deaths in the fishing industry every single year. That's pretty crazy. In America, about 4,500 to 5,000 men die at work every year, which is huge. That's more, for the record, that's more than the entire military deaths for the entire Iraq war. So 20 years of war, all the American military deaths, more men die every year at work than all. It's crazy. Obviously, suicide. You and me and every young man the biggest threat to your life is killing yourself. And that would be the biggest threat to your life every day you wake up until you're about 50. So I just think if the biggest risk to a man's life is him killing himself, what does that tell you about his experiences in the world? And that really summarizes it all. That's why I try to position myself as an advocate against male suicide, because ultimately everything I speak about, like domestic violence, for example, the headlines are men and women are abusive equally in relationships, and yet about 1% of domestic abuse refuge goes to men, 99% goes to women. 1% of funding goes to men, 99% goes to women. It's not equal by any means. It's far, far from it. And it's even worse when you consider about 11% of men who are being abused will consider or attempt suicide. So in the UK, it's about 3 million men who are being abused. If you take 10% of that, that's 300,000 men at risk of suicide in their lifetime. So the issues are big, and it pisses me off when other people in the space confine men and boys issues to like men not talking, boys not crying, or like men wearing dresses. Like those are fine. We can talk about those. Men in dresses, great. You look great, Harry Styles. Happy for you. Boys can cry. Absolutely. I'm so supportive of that. And men can talk. Men should talk. But that is not the complete picture. And that is not the complete solution. I would say that talking won't solve a lot of the things that lead to male suicide, for example. And I just think overall I can do better. And I have done better. And I would keep doing better. And I hope, I'm sure I've missed stuff. And then again, we could talk a lot about like minority men as well. Like it's important we talk about working class men, black men, especially when it comes to like crime and the judicial system, police brutality, for example. We talk a lot about how it's a racial issue. Like a lot of the Americans being killed by police are black people, but no one really mentions the fact that the overwhelming proportion of black people killed by police in America are black men. And I mean like 99% black men, 1% black women. So no one talks about that intersection. And another one, like, of course, gay men. Gay men are uniquely persecuted in a very different way to gay women, both today and historically. So obviously, again, gay men less accepted than gay women in every single country in the world. And historically, it was gay men who were persecuted. So in the UK, where I live, it was illegal to be a gay man. It was not illegal to be a gay woman. Gay men were sent to hard labor camps or were castrated chemically. That did not happen to gay women. And by being a gay woman is not accepted either, but it was not, you're not persecuted. Same thing in the Nazi party. Obviously, they killed about 15,000 gay men, but that wasn't the same for being a lesbian. The Nazi party uniquely singled out gay men. And again, being a lesbian was not condoned, but it wasn't the same as being a gay man. So there's lots of different issues, massive universal issues that all men experience. And then there's intersectional issues beneath that. Some of the ones I discussed in terms of gay men and black men and working class men. Fathers, of course, got to talk about fathers' rights. And I mean, there's just so much to talk about. More stuff to talk about than could be squeezed into any podcast or any Instagram page.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my answer. I hope it's good enough.
No, we could have chosen any one of those topics and done an entire podcast on just the education system.
Honestly, if you dialed into this podcast about an hour ago, you'd have got me mid-rant about this exact subject. Well, the topic I'm talking about today is Boko Haram was a terrorist group, is a terrorist group in Nigeria that notoriously kidnapped about 300 girls. You probably saw on the news in 2014. Bring back our girls. Remember that? It's a worldwide news. 300 girls taken by a terrorist group. The world kicked off. Celebrities, the news, the media, the public, Michelle Obama, world leaders, all trying to get these girls back. And a lot of them did come back. But since then, 10,000 boys have been taken by Boko Haram, and no one said anything. I'm not trying to talk about it today. And I'm like, 10,000 boys taken by a terrorist group and indoctrinated into becoming child soldiers. I'm like, why on earth is no one talking about that? All I see on Instagram is bullshit. All I see on Twitter is whining. I'm like, 10,000 boys have gone missing. And the stuff I see people complaining about is like the orgasm gap or women not having pockets, or like I keep hearing people complaining about like Siri having a woman's voice or a man's voice. And it's just like, can we have like a set of priorities, please? Like, I would say 10,000 boys being abducted into a terrorist group should be moved slightly higher in the social justice warrior agenda. And it's not. No one seems to care, unfortunately.
Yeah. I love the way that I just love your work, man. And I just picture you as the guy like, excuse me, why are we talking about women's pockets? I have this study here from decades of research that says X, Y, and Z. Can we maybe get some money and attention for that?
I know, it's just like, I'm sick and tired of seeing Harry Styles in the dress as if that's some sort of like massive problem for men. It's like, wear a dress if you want. You look great. I'm happy for you. But it's just like a meme, and you're meme-ifying men and boys issues. And like you're really minimalizing them to just basic, simple, trivial matters. And there's bigger fish to fry, much bigger fish. And like we need to start talking about them and stop pretending, minimizing, watering them down. Yeah.
And so talking about it and raising the awareness is one of the key first steps. And then ideally what would happen after that? Like if you're a Harry Potter fan, like if you had the magic stick thing and you're like, abracad, I don't know. I didn't read Harry Potter. Please still remain respectful to me. But like, what would ideally occur? Would it be swift government action? Would it be widespread social support? People in the street marching for men? Like, what would you like to see?
I mean, I'll take any of that. So all of that sounds good to me. I mean, I'm always flip-flopping between like, do we need meaningful government intervention and like funding, or is the answer more community-based, where all of us should take a small portion of the problem and try our best to solve it? Of course, both is ideal, but I do generally feel like we don't need to wait for the government to appoint a minister for men. In a lot of ways, we can start going to work now. We can start just listening to the men and boys in our lives and not treating them as toxic or ubiquitously privileged or patriarchal or this other nonsense. Like, we can actually have grown up, meaningful conversations with men and boys right now. Like, stop listening to the podcast and call up a man in your life and actually, well, stop listening after the podcast is over, but call up a man in your life and actually listen to what he's got to say. Listen to him. And that doesn't require any government funding. So long-term government funding, meaningful interventions, actual policies, research done, dedicated to research for men. But right now, there's nothing stopping you from being a little bit kinder to the men in your life and a better listener to your male friends and family. So, yeah, both.
Amen.
Possible.
I would add to that too, as individuals, I know we're often very rightfully encouraged to stand up for or against racist posts, racist comments, sexist jokes, etc. And I've seen many sort of tongue-in-cheek or sarcastic things about, oh, not enough men are dying from the pandemic, or it's like, that's not funny. Like
Clementine Ford's, that's Clementine Ford, classic. It's there's some, honestly, like,
speaking up in defense of men, I guess, is what I was trying to get across. It's like,
there's some serious anti-male bigotry going on. Just completely, no one's calling attention to it. It just seems to be widely accepted. People seem to think it's advocacy. Like, some people think that's actual advocacy for men to call them toxic. It's not, and it's not at all. What you talked about there is a tweet by Clementine Ford where she tweeted out that the COVID-19 just isn't killing men fast enough. And I'm like, wow. And Clementine Ford is not some crazy fringe bigot. She is like a very influential, prominent feminist in Australia, sold loads of books. She's like very well respected. And she's saying that COVID isn't killing men fast enough. And the sad thing is that COVID did kill a lot of men. It killed men at 1.6 times the rate as women. Like, men are, and no one talks about it, uniquely vulnerable to infectious diseases as a result of both testosterone and the XY chromosome. And they are being killed by COVID. Like, men, the male death rate is way higher from COVID. Men are 3 times more likely to go into intensive care if they get COVID than a woman. And no one talks about that either, which is frustrating because like I said, as I work as a content creator professionally, I actually worked with the NHS during COVID to help target at-risk groups, such as South Asian and Black communities. And that's great. I was really proud of it. But I was really disappointed that the male sex was not targeted. And the NHS are well aware that the male sex were uniquely vulnerable, and they sat by and let those men die. It's something like 60,000 excess male deaths in America, and that was in October of 2020. So God knows what it became after that. October 21. And yeah, there's a lot of people out there saying some really nasty things about men, and they're not being taken into account. And it is depressing, and it is that feeding into the whole problem itself. It's divisive. It does catastrophic damage to men's mental health, especially boys. And those people should be ashamed of themselves. Clementine Ford should be ashamed of herself. And I really think these people will look back in 20 years, hopefully when we're getting our praise, they're getting like shit on, most of all by themselves, like humiliated. I always describe it a bit as like everyone looks back in time at the photos of themselves as a kid, and they cannot believe what they wore or their hairstyle or how they dress. It's like bad. And I'm like, at the time, I had awful hair. I mean, I'm sure I've still got awful hair now, but at the time, I thought that my hairstyle was great. I thought I dressed really well. I thought I was the coolest guy in the playground. I look back at those photos now, and I'm like, whoa, that is embarrassing. I need to not look at that anymore. And I feel like our political opinions are going to be very similar. That we're going to look back at these times with horror and humiliation and great shame. And I don't want to be one of those people. And I hope I'm not. And I think some people will. I feel like if you tweet out, COVID just isn't killing men fast enough, you should be ashamed now. And you should be even more ashamed looking back in hindsight.
Yeah. And the compassionate part of me is just so intrigued by how much pain that person has to be in to tweet something like that. To believe something like that, right?
It's like, it's true.
Not to excuse it, certainly, but
not at all. And you make a very valid point there, and I'll build upon it. Where one of the viewpoints I like to take when I'm looking at violent men is I try to encourage people not to see a violent man as a static endpoint, but to consider what sort of journey that person has been to for him to become violent. Like often it's a journey of bullying, often it's a journey of neglect or loneliness or depression, or maybe they've been abused as a child, but maybe they've been like assaulted. We don't really know, but we need to ask ourselves what creates a man who is violent, because no one is born bad, but they become bad through their experiences in their environment. And the same is true for people like Clementine Ford. Like, what has happened to her for her to become such a massive asshole? Like, why does she hate men so much? And like, whatever has happened to her, assuming something has, like, I am sorry, and that should not have happened. And I hope in time you can give men a second chance, and you take note of the things you said, and you take them back. And I'm sure the people that hate men and are whinging about it online, they probably have their own painful experiences of men, and those are valid too. I don't know if they are bad people, but maybe they've had painful experiences at the hand of men, and that isn't right either, and that should be talked about.
Yeah. And as a man, I get annoyed and offended when I'm painted with that giant brush of all men. Like, men are evil, men are toxic. Yeah. I'm like, well, hang on. Like, there's billions of us. Like, surely there's a bit of diversity within that.
Yeah, that's a really great one to like play around with, and people say that, because that is not acceptable in any other group of people.
No.
Like, at no point can you, I mean, obviously you can, and you'll become a racist if you said that about black people, or you be an anti-Semite if you said that about Jewish people, or like, it's not acceptable in any other group, and it's not acceptable in men. And it's so annoying when someone's like, well, men are violent, and then a man gets offended, and then the person who said the original thing is like, well, if you're not violent, this isn't about you, and if you're offended, you're part of the problem. And I hear that all the time, and I'm like, that is also not, and that's not a good defense. If I said women are shit at driving, and they're not, by the way, they are actually, I think they're better drivers than men. But if I were to say that in hypothetical space, and then women would come at me being like, oh, fuck you, no, I'm a great driver. I couldn't then be like, well, if you're a great driver, this isn't about you, and if you're offended, you're part of the problem. I'd be like, I could never say that, and I would never say that. And it's crazy how we just don't seem to extend that same logic, common sense, and compassion to men and boys. Like, it's not acceptable to judge an entire group of people by the actions of a problematic majority, either the violent men causing the minority of men causing most violent actions, or the billionaires at the top. Like, we're judged as violent, or we're all seen as like billionaires, because obviously the billionaires are the Zuckerbergs and the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezos and Warren Buffett. They're all white men, but people use the same viewpoint to project that onto all men. So then all men are billionaires or privileged, or there's walking through life on easy mode and a big bank account full of money. So yeah, you've stumbled across a really stupid thing people say, and it's not acceptable. It's simply not acceptable. It's so stupid, and that's the sort of discourse that pushes men and boys away and towards people like Andrew Tate.
Yeah. And so for those listening, I know you've got the Instagram account. You have a podcast also. So
yeah.
Or no?
Instagram. Yeah, I do, but I mean,
is Instagram the main?
It is, purely because the amount of time I put into Instagram, I get a lot more out of it than the amount of time. The podcast, It'll take me days to do it, and I won't. I mean, I'll get some viewers, and I know it's important. I do enjoy it, but I just get the juice is worth to squeeze more so from Instagram.
Yeah.
And I just don't have the time to do everything I want. So unfortunately, the podcast has been neglected.
Okay.
So Instagram, that's where I'm at.
The call to action to those listening is like follow George on Instagram at the Tin Men, the TN men,
the TN men, the Tin Men. It's all the same.
And just write their congressman, start standing up for men when they see it. Like, what would you?
Yeah, I got a comment today from someone who wrote to their local politician, their MP, and they were in Birmingham in the UK, and they basically, one of my followers had found all the funding for the male domestic abuse charities, and it was like, I think it was like £14,000, which is nothing for one charity. And then he found all of the funding for the women's abuse charities, and it was millions and millions and millions. And he was just like, well, how is that fair? I was like, 1 in 3 survivors of abuse in the UK is a man, and he's getting nothing. And 2 in 3 are women, and they're getting basically all of it. And he wrote to his MP, and she wrote back, and she was like amazed. And she was like, this is brilliant. I'm going to take this to Parliament. And I'm going to use this to like just go after the government and be like, this is great evidence. This is fantastic. And like, that is how you get change. Like, write to your bloody politician and vote, kick up a fuss, go meet your local MP, and exercise your democratic right. That's what women do. Like, my God, women outvote men. Like every year in America, women outvote men, and they have done that for 40 years. It's not surprising they have all these amazing things that men don't have. And it's like, you just got to vote for it, guys. Like, remind politicians that if you don't do these things for men and boys, you won't get my vote. Simple. And they will actually do it, because politicians, that's what they want. They don't give a shit. They just want you to vote for them. So I guess that'd be my long lasting message. Please vote. Please become politically engaged. Talk to your friends. Talk to your MP. Cause a fuss. And yeah, that's some great advocacy work right there.
Yeah. Use your voice. Stir up some good trouble, I think.
Rock the boat. Throw some stones. Why not?
Yeah. Fuck it. All right, brother. Well, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for chatting. And for all you do, man. I really do enjoy your work. And the scientist in me so appreciates the nuanced dialogue that you initiate and the facts and figures. And yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'm with you at the tip of the spear, man.
I look forward to seeing you in the comments. And yeah, likewise. And hopefully our future selves are going to give us a big pat on the back. I hope. Goodness.
Yeah. I mean, when you were talking about the looking back, I was thinking about, old movies or old comedians' jokes that like have aged very, very poorly. And I think the other side of that is the work that you're discussing here and that I'm trying to promote also, which is like, in 20 years, will I be proud of this? Will this stand the test of time? Am I going to be okay with what I said?
It is difficult. And I do genuinely try to consider everything I say. And I do want to consider being wrong, only because so few people are saying what I'm saying and everyone's saying something else. Like, I always compare it to a joke I heard. And it was basically, the joke goes like this, is a family is sat at home watching TV and they see a news broadcast comes up, emergency. And then the news broadcast is like, emergency, there's a man driving the wrong way down the motorway right now. And it cuts to live cameras. And then the family are like, holy shit, Granddad's coming down. Granddad's going to come this way any minute now. Quickly, let's call Granddad and warn him. So they call Granddad, who's driving down that road. And he picks up and they're like, Granddad, watch out. There's a crazy man driving the wrong way down the road. And Granddad says, one person, everyone's driving the wrong way. And I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to look back and be like, I was the one driving the wrong way down the road. Everyone else is right. So yeah, I try to remain open to being wrong as much as possible. And I really hope I'm not. I really hope I'm proud of what I've said and done in 10 years' time. Because it'd be embarrassing if I'm not, to be honest. And I guess time will tell.
Yeah, I'll have to come back on the podcast in 10 years. We'll check in.
Yeah. Well, that'll be
like, man, it was all fucked, George. We were really
you are fucking. Yeah, it's embarrassing. You spent a lot of time doing that, but
yeah.
I just say, at least I hope showing that I am open to being wrong lessens the likelihood of actually being wrong.
100%.
And yeah, I guess we'll find out. And I look forward to joining you in 5 years' time.
Cool, brother.
Thanks for having me.
All right, my friend, there you have it. As mentioned, you can find George on Instagram at the TInMen, at the 10men, and follow along. Go and sample some of his recent posts. You'll check out the vibe. You'll see what he's doing, how he's doing it. There's lots of facts and figures in there, tons of references and citations to studies and publications, which, I must admit, the scientist in me absolutely adores and respects. Puts a lot of work into the work that he does. And so I appreciate that. And you know what else? I appreciate you. You're great. I love that you're listening to my voice right now. I love that you support the podcast, that you spread the word, that you put up some 5-star reviews, share it with your family and friends, the milkmen, anybody you've ever met on a train or a bus or a subway. It's all good. Thanks for being here. Thanks for finding me everywhere that long-distance love bombs can be typed. And I will talk to you soon.